Right, so AEW has obviously existed now for nearly 6 years, and with that means AEW has booked many a bad match, booked many a bad segment, and there's definitely times where we can look and say that AEW made the wrong booking decision. You know, the odd match where maybe the wrong person won, times like when Jay White lost to Billy Gunn, examples like that. But there's also been times in AEW where the wrong booking decision has led to wider consequences, and I'm here to talk about a few of those examples today, as we talk about a few of the biggest what-if scenarios in AEW history and some of the worst AEW booking decisions and ideas they've ever had. So like and subscribe as we talk about the first item on this list, as this was a booking decision made very early on in AEW that only would go on to hurt them. That is Cody Rhodes and his inability to challenge for the AEW World Championship. Cody Rhodes was of course one of the founding members of All Elite Wrestling. I know it sounds crazy, but it is genuinely easy to forget that. It's weird because Cody Rhodes has been in WWE for years again now. He's done so much since returning, but also he wasn't even in AEW that long ago. He was in AEW in 2022, and his AEW run can kind of go down as mostly a bust. His run didn't go down well with fans, and there was one early decision that could have really affected that, and that was when he ruled himself out of challenging for the AEW World Championship. So of course Chris Jericho was crowned the first AEW champion at AEW All Out 2019 when he beat Hangman Page in the first world title match, and Dynamite would premiere in October of that year as they would build to their first pay-per-view post-Dynamite launch, that being Full Gear, set to happen in November, and it was announced that the first challenger for Chris Jericho's World Championship in AEW would be none other than Cody himself. And Cody Rhodes versus Chris Jericho would be the match and the main program that they would be building throughout weeks of Dynamite to lead up to Full Gear. But when this match was first announced, I distinctly remembered there being a fair bit of criticism for Cody Rhodes and AEW and this decision to have Cody Rhodes challenge for the belt, as a small vocal minority of fans and I guess detractors of AEW as well were trying to say that Cody Rhodes was using his EVP status and founder status to shoehorn himself into a world title match, and it was almost a nepotism match and it wasn't fair to the rest of the roster, etc, etc. Like I said, I remember that being a minor critique that people were making, but for the most part it was really a vocal minority, and to most AEW fans it didn't matter at all because no one was really expecting Cody Rhodes to win. I mean, Chris Jericho had just won the title, he was their first champion, no one thought he was going to lose his first defense, but lo and behold, Cody Rhodes would come out on an episode of AEW Dynamite and he would almost respond to that criticism, and he would announce that if he is to lose this match to Chris Jericho, he would no longer be able to challenge for the AEW World Championship, which was an extremely interesting stipulation because once again, I don't think anyone was expecting Cody to win, so I guess he was just about to rule himself out of challenging for the world title, and that's exactly what happened, because at Full Gear, Jericho would of course win. MJF turned on Cody Rhodes afterwards, there was that big angle, and yeah, Cody Rhodes was now ineligible to challenge for the AEW World Championship. One of the biggest stars in the company can't challenge for the world title. In my head at the time, I figured that surely they'd find some sort of stipulation where Cody would win the right back somehow to challenge for the title and it'd be a big thing, but we would end up never actually getting there, as following his exit from the world title scene, the Codyverse would be formed, as Cody Rhodes' booking in AEW almost became a thing of its own that was separate from the rest of the show, as the Codyverse, like I said, was in full effect. Everything in and out of Cody's circle of AEW and his booking was just so weird. He of course was the TNT champion and he did the weekly open challenge where it would main event Dynamite and stuff like that, and my guess was that he was trying to elevate this belt to a main event level as he wasn't able to challenge for the world title. However, he would eventually start hot potatoing the title himself, and his TNT title reigns would become a bit mundane as well after the first one. I believe his first TNT title reign was really really the only interesting one. And then you go on to the stuff with Anthony Ogogo and Malachi Black, and there was just so much weirdness in the Cody Rhodes verse of AEW, and I think that's thanks in big part to the fact that he had to be kept away from the main event scene and in his own bubble because he wasn't able to challenge for the world title. There was no reason for him to hang around these main event guys in the world title division, because what are they fighting for? You beat Cody Rhodes, what does it matter? He's not a world title challenger. And then it's the same for Cody. What does Cody get out of being a world title contender? Because he's not a contender, he can't challenge for the belt. It left these gaps in AEW booking where they kind of booked themselves into a corner, and it made it a lot harder for Cody Rhodes to find himself doing something compelling on AEW TV, because there was no motivation. He wasn't going for the big prize in the company, the main thing that everyone there in the company should realistically be fighting towards. He didn't have that, and instead we got the ridiculousness that was the Codyverse, which didn't connect with AEW fans whatsoever, and he would end up exiting AEW in 2022 following disagreements with AEW and Tony Khan with his contract status and other factors too, which we don't know about. And yeah, he left AEW with his decision to never challenge for the world title never being reversed. He never won the right back. He never challenged for the world title after that Jericho match, and Cody Rhodes has gone in interviews since saying that his goal is to win a world championship, and he wished he was able to go for the world title in AEW, so it looked as though him not being able to challenge for the world title in AEW really only served to hurt AEW, and really was one of the catalysts for Cody Rhodes exiting the company back to WWE. And yeah, Cody Rhodes is now back in WWE, like I said. He's a multi-time world champion, probably their biggest babyface, and AEW lost that and didn't let him challenge for the big one. But anyway, speaking of the TNT title, the one singles belt that Cody Rhodes did hold in AEW, there's always been talks amongst AEW fans about a certain man having a missed opportunity with that belt and a certain match where he should have won it. I'm talking about Andrade and their missed opportunity with him winning the TNT title. As in early 2022, Andrade would find himself in the TNT title scene alongside champion Sammy Guevara and also Darby Allin, who was also involved in challenging for the belt as well. Up until this point, Andrade had had just a weird run in AEW, to say the least. He came at a time where the AEW roster was really starting to get oversaturated and so many new signings were coming in at once, and he got lost in the shuffle very, very quickly. The most memorable thing he'd done up until that point was that match with Cody Rhodes, where Cody Rhodes just randomly put himself through a flaming table. And other than that, Andrade had become a mainstay of AEW Dark. He wasn't really doing anything interesting on AEW TV, and he was the leader of the AHFO, one of the most pointless stables in AEW history. So this TNT title feud in early March was the right move for him, and himself and Sammy Guevara had a great match on AEW Rampage in February for the belt, with Sammy Guevara retaining. Sammy would then retain against Darby Allin in a singles match, and then on AEW Rampage in March, a three-way match was booked with Sammy Guevara, Andrade, and Darby all going for the belt. And this is a match that I remember at the time it was announced, everyone was saying Andrade should win this. This is the perfect time to have Andrade win it and get something going on in this AEW run that he's been on so far, where just nothing's happened so far. It seemed like a great opportunity then, and the match happened, and Sammy Guevara retained, and ever since then it has actually been a thing amongst AEW fans that I hear every now and then, that Andrade should have won this match, and it's a big what if moment, as what if Andrade won this match? Would he still be in AEW to this day? Would his AEW run have turned around? I'm not too sure, to be honest, because on one hand, him as the TNT champion definitely would have been cool. He had great in-ring work. Andrade is obviously a fantastic worker, and he would have done a good job with that belt, I believe. However, around this time, Triple H also came into head of creative of WWE, and it was very clear that there were a few AEW wrestlers who used to work under Triple H and NXT who probably wanted to go back there. Andrade was definitely one of them, and is maybe one of the most obvious cases of someone who was trying to get themselves fired from AEW, as on October 5th it was reported that Andrade was sent home from AEW Dynamite after he got into a backstage altercation legitimately with none other than Sammy Guevara, the man he was unable to beat for the TNT title. Maybe he was still mad about that booking decision. Well, no, as it turns out, Andrade and Sammy Guevara were literally beefing with each other on Twitter publicly and planning to have a fight at AEW Dynamite, and sure enough, we got to Dynamite that Wednesday and it legit happened. One of the funniest cases in AEW history, and such a funny drama that was. And yeah, Andrade was suspended following this, and the rest of his AEW run was very turbulent. He was sent to CM Punk's AEW Collision with the rest of the AEW troublemakers, and he ended his AEW run doing the Continental Classic and went to WWE. And I wholeheartedly believe that even if he did win the TNT title, which, to be fair, I still believe he probably should have, he would have had a fun reign, I still believe if he did win it, he would have gone back to WWE anyway, because clearly it's just where he wanted to be. Okay, this doesn't usually happen, but quick update to interrupt. Literally as I was recording, this story has just dropped. Andrade gone from WWE? What? Andrade, since he returned to WWE, he hasn't actually really done that much in the company, and his run has been cold for a fair while, so maybe this shouldn't be surprising, but I just wasn't expecting to see it now, especially because I'm just talking about Andrade. But yeah, I guess we could see him return to AEW, so maybe that TNT title booking wasn't a bad thing after all. And finally, the last one to talk about are the various title belt thefts of Chris Jericho in AEW. Chris Jericho's AEW career started off very promising, very compelling. He was probably one of the most interesting and most entertaining people to watch in AEW. He, of course, was the first ever world champion in 2019. He formed the Inner Circle, which was fun. The Jericho Appreciation Society were also fun, and both stables were fixtures of AEW TV, being involved in some of the main programs against other stables like the Elite and the Blackpool Combat Club, taking part in Blood and Guts. However, everything that's kind of happened post Jericho Appreciation Society has just not been good and hasn't benefited anyone that Chris Jericho has feuded with, especially one of those being Hook, who he feuded with in 2024. So in March of 2024, there was a bit of a student mentor kind of gimmick going on with Jericho and Hook, where Hook beat Jericho in a singles match, and Jericho being impressed by it, but eventually getting jealous of it and turning on Hook, which led to a match between the two at Dynasty for the FTW title, which Jericho won. Something he didn't really need to do. It kind of just hurt the FTW belt in the long run, which by this point had probably existed on AEW TV for too long, in fairness. But essentially, Hook would get sucked into the Jericho-verse here and was trapped in a feud with Chris Jericho for months, as the Learning Tree was also formed during this feud with Big Bill and Brian Keith, who would also get involved in this feud. Shibata would also get involved in the feud along the way, as Jericho would retain the belt at Double or Nothing, and then at Forbidden Door, he would team with Jeff Cobb and Big Bill to take on who we now know as the Ops of Samoa Joe, Shibata, and Hook. This feud is now spanning to multi-man matches going on for months. This feud started in April. How is it still going on? And it made it all the way to All In August, where Hook was now challenging Jericho for the FTW title once again, which, by the way, a year prior at the last All In, Hook was also challenging for the FTW title, so just no progression there for Hook, and he would win it back, which was the nice thing to do, I guess, but it didn't benefit Hook in any way, and the FTW title was shortly after retired following Hook winning it back, because there was just no reason for it to now exist. And if it existed any longer, Chris Jericho would probably try to get his grubby mitts all over it. But yeah, not even 2 months later, we would get almost a repeat of this, as now Mark Briscoe, the Ring of Honor World Champion, was now sucked into the Jericho-verse, and on the October 23rd episode of Dynamite, Jericho would win the Ring of Honor World Championship. Why? Mark Briscoe winning that Ring of Honor World title was a really good thing for the title at that time, and he was a great representative of Ring of Honor and the brand and the belt, and Jericho winning it, it did nothing for Ring of Honor. He never appeared on the shows other than in pre-tapes that were clearly done during Dynamite. He never appeared in any in-ring segment or had a match on Ring of Honor TV. He'd only appear defending the belt on Dynamite and Rampage and Collision, and then appear at the Ring of Honor pay-per-views to put on terrible matches against the likes of Matt Cardona. Nothing against Matt Cardona, but what about Chris Jericho versus Matt Cardona screams Ring of Honor? The match these two had at Hammerstein Ballroom in Final Battle is probably one of the biggest atrocities ever committed at that wrestling venue, and just a match to forget for the Ring of Honor World title, and definitely a time to forget for the Ring of Honor World title as well. Jericho would of course eventually lose the belt to Bandito in 2025, which was the right thing to do, and Bandito has been a very good champion with that belt since it's been off Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho has since been off TV, and it goes to show because the TV quality of AEW has been a lot better since Jericho has been gone, which I think says a lot. But yeah, all of Chris Jericho's title reigns and titles that he's held hostage in AEW, the Ring of Honor and FTW titles, it's just served no purpose and helped no one. It hurt the people that they were feuding with, didn't make them look any better, didn't get them any more over, and it made viewers roll their eyes and groan and turn off the TVs and go take a piss. But yeah, I think I'm done there. I think those are some of the worst AEW decisions ever, which genuinely affected AEW and their presentation and their product, led to people leaving the company. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and comment down below if you can think of any others. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye and keep on rolling.